Ticket to Ride Track Switcher. This is a puzzle logic game for 1 to more players. I mean, ideally it's a solitaire game, but you can play with multiple players that are working together to solve the puzzles. It is a puzzle in the tradition of Rush Hour. That's probably the most famous one, probably the founder of the genre. Today, I also reviewed the Catan Logic Puzzle, which is the similar idea. And the idea is that you're going to have a set of components that can be configured in different ways based on challenge cards that will go from easy, from level 1, to more and more complicated until level 40, which is the highest that you got. And so you have 40 puzzles with really a varying level of difficulty from, puzzles that children will be able to solve without adults to challenges that are honest challenge for adults also. The idea is that the game is also based on Ticket to Ride. So on top of being a puzzle, you also have references to a game that is a beloved classic for many of us. The game comes with the main board where the action will take place and a tray for the components, and the tray fits in the game itself and it looks pretty nice once you put it in. So that makes for a good travel set. Everything fits snugly and nicely. So when you want to play, you will choose a card with a challenge. There is also going to be a solution on the back. Don't look at it, but just to show you, it's really there. And you can place the card there, standing that way, Rush Hour style. Then what you're going to do next, you're going to set up the game using 1 or more locomotives. There are 2, and in some scenarios you will use 2. And then different cars here. And also in some scenarios you will use these game pieces here that will simply block some of the connections. But this is not one of those. So the card will tell you how you set up the puzzle, and you simply match the position of the pieces to match the top half of the card, and your job will be to move things around until you create the configuration at the bottom. Now, differently from most of the games of this kind that I tried, that I can think of, is not an either or affair. Rush Hour at the games is like, you do it or you do not. You win or you lose. You solve it or not solve it. Here you have different possible scores because you have an optimal result, which is the one in the top left corner of the card, which is the minimum possible number of moves that it will take you to solve the puzzle. And so, for example, I know optimally I can do it in 7 moves, but I guess I can also be happy to do it in just 8 or 9. And for some of the higher levels, you will probably start by finding first one of these solutions, and then you decide if you want to go for the best ones. And of course you do. That's just what you do. Now, what counts as a move? You will move mainly your locomotive, and then you will push and or pull cars as you go. Simply put, a move is you take your locomotive and you keep going until either you push something off the board, and you can't do that, so you have to stop before you do so, or you would take a sharp turn. And this is a sharp turn, and that is a sharp turn. Depending on the direction you're coming, that also is a sharp turn. And so, for example, what I just did there, that would be a legal move and will count as a move. And since, again, to make sure that I score my points and I know how well I'm doing, I'm going to keep track of my moves either by counting or if I want to free that mental space, there is a tracker here. I don't know if you can see it in the camera. White on white is very hard to see, but in person, that's not a problem. So that's what you use to keep track of how many moves you used. How awesome is that? Very awesome. That's the answer, because that was a rhetorical question. So right now I just did a move. Hooray! So as I move my locomotive, I can pick up and drop off stuff. I can simply, look, I did another move. I can simply push things if they are in front of me, and I can push any number of cars that way. So that would be another move. I can also connect and instead of pushing, pull things. So that was another move. And simply I declare, well, in my head, I decide if I'm gonna pick up, I'm gonna pull things that are directly behind me. In this case, for free, without extra moves, I could be pulling this one and possibly that one also if I decide to get both that way. And so that would be another legal move. It wouldn't make any sense in the puzzle I'm trying to solve, but it would be legal. So that's it. I can do it, and you can't stop me. You don't know me. Booyah! I could do that, like that, and then do that, which makes no sense. But again, I am creative. So that's just to give you a sense of the general idea of how you're gonna use this connection a lot to turn around. Of course, that would have been an extra move right there that I needed to take into account. So this is the general idea. It's a simple idea. And when I saw, okay, a puzzle game of this kind with trains, I've seen that. There's a version of Rush Hour that uses trains that I like, incidentally, very much. It's my favorite version of Rush Hour. But this one feels markedly different, despite the theme in common. The theme is trains. I don't know that it feels like Ticket to Ride specifically, because you're not really making connections between cities. There isn't that push your luck, commit but not too much element to Ticket to Ride. So the connection with Ticket to Ride is very thin. The connection with trains is a lot more real there, because, well, that's how I imagine trains move, with all the clunkiness and as you're moving around, it becomes more complicated because these trains, these cars, get in the way. So, for example, if I were to pull this thing here, well, that wouldn't be a good idea because I get stuck there. Unless, again, maybe I need to do that so that then I can go and pick up that one and do something else. So, the theme is there. It's not Ticket to Ride, but possibly, but it's trains or ride. The production is very nice. These pieces are solid, sturdy. The cards are colorful, clear to read. Even when you have to use the solutions, I thought, how can they convey clearly in this, non-Euclidean space, so to speak, which moves you have to do? But they managed to do that clearly. One thing, there's not a problem once you get used to it, is that basically, you will move by clicks. I mean, you have infinite movement as long as you don't follow the board, you don't push anything off the board, and you don't take a sharp turn. Infinite movement. But you will need to end your movement in specific places. And again, white on white, it's not going to be super easy to see, but you should be able to see those clicks there, right? So those are the positions in which the locomotive or a car must end. So I cannot end movement with the locomotive like that. And suppose I'm pulling this guy here. So that would be illegal, but I can do like that, and that would be legal. But what is not super intuitive at the beginning is that because of the connections that you have, diagonal connections, you have curves, these clicks, these spaces are not all the same distance. So that's one. And this one, although it's a lot longer and would fit two game pieces, this is only one. And that is when it gets tricky and I got confused at the beginning. This is only one piece, which also means, incidentally, that these two are adjacent, as is now, and these are still adjacent because it's still the same click. So depending on how you place it, where you place it in these long, non-straight segments, sometimes you may not realize that where they are. But after a while, you realize, okay, there's a segment and I may want to pick it later, so I'm not going to leave it hanging there. I'm going to place it there so I can pick it up later. The fact that these segments are functionally, in game terms, all the same length, all the same value and the same use, but they are visually and physically different lengths, is the only things that is a little bit inelegant, but I don't know that there would have been any way of solving that without, solving that when you have, again, these diagonal and curved lines. Also, when I look at this, it looked like there weren't many connections, many ways to go, and I thought, how can they have any variety with these puzzles? It's gonna be the same 2-3 moves. It's not. It's really not. I think they got the general idea of tricky sequential movements, and maybe they got that idea from, again, some of the puzzles of this kind, like Rush Hour. But they made it their own. This game has its own personality, and because you have unique moves that you don't do in other games of this kind, including the orientation of the locomotive. Because again, when it's pulling, it pulls from the back. It pushes with the front and it pushes with the back, but it cannot pull from the front. So sometimes you do need that extra move to do it. So for example, like that, I cannot do that. I cannot pull it that way. So the orientation of the locomotive also matters. So it's a game that may seem super minimalistic, but has a variety of gameplay that surprised me pleasantly. Definitely enjoyed playing the game, especially some of the higher level scenarios. I like that it sets up so quickly. Sometimes you have 3 pieces on the board, the locomotive and 2 cars, and still it can be a good challenge. So definitely I find Ticket to Ride a worthy new installment, a worthy new specimen in a family of multi-configuration puzzles that I enjoyed in the past, and I think this is, again, it's a worthy new addition to that family. It's a fun game. You can play it with children, you can give it to children to play by themselves. I think it provides you with a fun challenge, with an interesting theme, and smooth and rewarding gameplay.